Elliot sat motionless on a park bench, his blank eyes staring off into the distance where the sun was slipping behind the aging trees. The evening breeze brushed against his face, but he didn't bother to turn. He had a decent degree, a job, a nice phone, and a small apartment, but not a single reason to feel happy. He hadn't genuinely smiled in months. Every day felt like a pointless loop. Go to work, get paid, pay bills, go home, with the same question playing on repeat in his mind. What am I even living for? His friends online were thriving, falling in love, building careers, living their best lives. And Elliot, he felt like a side character in his own story. Nobody really needed him. No one felt more at ease just because he was around. He felt like a faint ripple in the loud ocean of people who were all going places. Sometimes he wondered, if he disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even notice? In the quiet ache of that thought, Elliot decided to visit his grandfather, the only person in his life who never rushed anything. Charles lived in a small wooden house on the outskirts of town, where everything smelled like timber and peace. No social media, no phone notifications, just hot tea and stories that tasted like time. By the time Elliot arrived, his grandfather had already set the kettle. The soft amber light settled on his wrinkled, kind face like a warm blanket laid gently over Elliot's cold spirit. "You look more worn out than that board meeting I sat through back in '83, he said, half joking. Elliot gave a forced smile, but it faded quickly, like it was never really there. "Grandpa," he said after a long pause, his voice rough like he'd swallowed a stone, "I don't know what I'm doing with my life anymore. Nothing feels meaningful. It's like I'm just existing." Charles didn't look surprised. His eyes quietly studied Elliot, like a doctor reading someone's soul with the patience of someone who'd lived long enough to understand storms. He didn't rush to ask, didn't try to comfort. He let the silence do the soothing, the way people wait out a storm before they start to clean up. Only after the tea had steeped just right, he set his cup down, folded his arms, leaned back in his chair, and gazed into the distance, like he was staring into his own younger years, then spoke slowly and clearly. "Have you ever honked your horn while driving?" Elliot was caught off guard by the question. He raised an eyebrow. "Of course, who hasn't?" "So what do you think a car horn is for?" Charles asked, as casually as if he were asking whether Elliot wanted sugar or honey in his tea. Elliot shrugged. "To warn people, if someone doesn't see you, or if they're about to cause an accident." Charles nodded slightly. "That's the textbook answer. But in real life? Ever notice how most honking isn't about safety? It's frustration. It's the bottled-up shout of a long, tired day. It's how people unload on each other without saying a word." He paused, then added with a deeper tone, 90% of the horns I hear are just people yelling, "Get out of my way, I'm in a hurry, I matter more." No one's really honking to save anybody. Elliot said nothing. He thought about the times he'd honked, not to avoid a crash, but out of irritation, because the person ahead was too slow, because of traffic, because he was just in a bad mood, and the horn was like a pressure valve. "I remember once," Charles continued, "I was standing at a busy intersection, total gridlock. No one could move. Then the light turned green, and strangely, no one honked. Everyone just waited. No yelling, no rush, just this quiet, shared patience among total strangers. A full minute of calm." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if still feeling that silence in his veins. "That moment," he said, "when everyone collectively chose not to make noise, it felt like the world agreed to be kind. No one fought for space. No one demanded to go first. Everyone just held their place, and that was enough." He looked up at Elliot, his eyes soft but serious. "You know, Elliot, just by not honking, you might ease the tension for someone with depression. You might keep a pregnant woman from getting startled. You might help someone who just lost their job feel a little less pushed out of the world. Sometimes being kind isn't about grand gestures. No capes, no spotlight. It's simply choosing not to cause more harm." Elliot looked at his grandfather, his eyes flickering like a small crack letting in light. A part of his mind paused, like a record needle finding its groove and finally playing something warm and steady. But he wasn't fully there yet. His grandfather knew that, and continued, his voice light as steam rising from the teacup, but carrying the weight of a lifetime. "Like reading a book. While you're sitting quietly with a book, you're not arguing online. You're not starting a pointless fight. You're not shoving through a crowd of exhausted people. You're not judging anyone, not forcing anyone to listen to you. You're just holding space for some peace in the world. He paused, smiled gently, and lifted his cup. Not every meaningful thing shows results right away. Some good things happen quietly, even without the person realizing they caused them. You know why that is? Charles lowered his cup and looked directly at Elliot. Because life isn't only shaped by intentional actions, it's also made by the good things we do without even meaning to. Then he shared a story. One time, I gave a 5-star review to a book I liked. No big reason, just thought it deserved to be seen. A few months later, I bumped into a young woman at a coffee shop holding that exact book. She said, "I bought it because the reviews were solid. It changed how I see life." He chuckled. I didn't even remember writing that review, but she did, and it changed her life. That's not a miracle. It's just a tiny dot on the map, but it was the right dot at the right time. Elliot stayed quiet, but his gaze shifted, for the first time not drifting into nothingness, but turning inward. "Elliot," his grandfather said, his voice deep and warm, "have you ever heard the saying, if you want to help the poor, don't become one of them?" Elliot nodded slowly. It sounds harsh, but it has a point. Sometimes just being okay, not needing help, is a way of helping. When you're not adding to the list of people in crisis, when you're not asking others to rescue you from choices you made, you're leaving space for someone who really needs it. And if you're lucky, maybe one day you'll be able to help someone else. That made Elliot blink. He had never thought of it like that. In a world obsessed with being exceptional, where everyone wants to prove they're doing something big, it felt strange, even refreshing, to realize that simply not being a burden might be a form of contribution. Charles leaned back, speaking slowly, like he was reading a life lesson that no textbook had ever written down. You think doing something meaningful has to be something huge, but I think someone who stays calm instead of losing it, someone who waits their turn, someone who gives up their seat, they're doing something meaningful too. Not because they're trying to be good, but because they understand they're not the only one in the world. Elliot looked down at his hands. He thought about the time he stopped his car to let an elderly man cross the street, then forgot about it. Or when he held the door for a woman carrying too many bags. Small things, forgotten instantly. But maybe, for someone having a hard day, they were the brightest moment. It might not have been a big deal, not a milestone, not an achievement, not something that goes on a resume, but it was a kind presence in a world that spins too fast. He started to understand. Life didn't need him to be the best, the richest, or the most talented. It just needed him to be present, with awareness, without adding more noise to an already overloaded system. Life, he realized, doesn't always need breakthroughs. Sometimes, it just needs you to stay quiet when you could shout, to pause when you could push, to take a step back when you could win. Elliot stood up and walked out to the backyard where his grandfather grew lavender bushes. The sky was darkening, but his heart felt lighter. He turned back and said, "Grandpa, thanks for not honking." Charles burst into laughter. See, sometimes doing good is just not doing harm. In a world that constantly pressures you to stand out, to do something big, Elliot's story is a gentle reminder of a simple truth. Living a meaningful life doesn't always come from creating something massive. Sometimes it's about choosing not to add more weight to others. When you choose not to honk in a tired crowd, you offer them a moment of peace. When you read instead of argue, you preserve the world's calm. When you do your small job with quiet integrity, you help keep the gears of this world running smoothly. What you do, even if no one sees it, still shapes the world. Remember, a kind, quiet, and responsible life is already a gift to this world, and sometimes that's the greatest thing you can give. I hope you found this story helpful. If you enjoyed today's story, be sure to hit the like button. It might seem like a small thing, but because of how the YouTube algorithm works, videos with more likes tend to get shown to more people. So your like really helps this video reach others who might need it too. And if you find my content valuable, consider subscribing. It really helps more people discover it. Thanks for watching, and I wish you and your family good health and peace. See you in the next story.